SABC, together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, bring you the final verdict. In the pursuit of justice, we are all equal before the law. These are some of the stories that have led to the final verdict. Countless people were severely affected by the brutal nature of South Africa's apartheid past. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission set out to acknowledge those who suffered by recommending that final reparation grants be paid to victims of gross human rights abuses. However, once the grants were approved by government, many of those victims proved difficult to find.
Apartheid at some stage was declared crime against humanity. And the South African political settlement was not the one that arose out of the battlefield, but the political solution in South Africa was based on a negotiated settlement. And part of the outcomes of that negotiated settlement was how the races of this country are going to continue to live together going forward.
Terrence, moenie ons tyd mos nie. Ons weet hy was daar die dag voor die strooptog.
Ek het vir jou gesê, ek was by die werk.
Weer bewusteloos. Hey! Word wakker, man! Hey! Kom! Praat met my. Vertel vir my. Waartoe is hulle?
Hulle het my nie gesê nie.
Luister, ek is siek en swak van stories. Hoor jy my?
Ek beloof, asseblief. Vra vir my vrou.
Terrence, jou vrou is dood.
Jy lieg.
Jy weet dit nie.
Fuck off!
Los hom maar daar. Ons kan môre terugkom. Miskien sal hy 'n ander deuntjie sing.
Ja, kom, ons gaan. Dis dink jy met my siek.
Jy moet gaan stort, skeer donder.
Considering the brutal nature of the apartheid regime, it became imperative that the government, the incoming government, do something to dissuade our people to change from that position.
South Africa made an option of following the Truth and Reconciliation process, which was very important in ensuring that the truth about the South African story is being told, and that the victims in South Africa are given an opportunity to tell their side of the story, not only with the hope that they will receive reparations, but for the whole world and for the country to know. But also it provided an opportunity for those that were on the other side to be able to tell the stories relating to their politically inspired activities that may have been seriously in violation of human rights.
The TRC set up the Committee on Reparation and Rehabilitation of Victims to provide victim support and restore victims' dignity. Any person who believed they had suffered gross human rights violations could apply to the committee, which would decide whether they qualified for reparations. Of the 21,769 people who were determined eligible, a total of 16,837 beneficiaries applied to receive final reparations. After considering the committee's recommendations, Parliament approved a once-off individual grant of 30,000 rand for those people who were declared victims by the committee. The President's Fund was established to pay out the final reparation grants.
The Committee on Reparations and Rehabilitation of Victims, being the committee of the TRC, had to make a decision in terms of limiting the people that could be declared victims in terms of the TRC Act. First and foremost, it has to be those people that appeared before the TRC, or alternatively that made a statement to the TRC.
Person is a victim if his rights were violated, physically, mentally, or his earnings, pecuniary benefits were affected, or he was maimed or even killed, then such persons during the period of 1960 to 1994, then such a person would be considered to be a victim. It is all forms of gross human, but it must be politically related.
Coming up, Terence makes application for payment of final reparations. The Committee on Reparation and Rehabilitation of Victims decided that Terence qualified for reparations, so he and his sister Joyce visited their local TRC office to make application.
So the incident happened in 1984?
Yes.
And the wounds to your head, that's what caused your blindness?
Yes. I was left there for 2 days before I was taken to the doctor.
2 days?
Yes.
It's a miracle you survived.
Some would say that. But, you know.
Have you been able to get work since then?
No. I was a builder before then. It was the only skill I had. My sister has been taking care of me.
And your wife?
She was killed in the raid. I have been such a burden.
But your family, not some burden.
Sometimes I wish I hadn't gotten involved with the struggle at all.
You were standing up for us, for our freedom. Many of us were far too afraid to do that. Suthetha njalo, Terence.
And now I'm here, wanting money. It just makes me feel funny.
It's not about you deserving money, Mr. Gunya. It's about helping those whose lives were so badly affected by what happened to them. Many people refuse to come forward because they think it's unheroic. But we are not awarding heroes here. We're trying to help those who suffered in the name of freedom. If you think about it, it's the least government can do.
The TRC itself made recommendation that the government must pay some form of reparation to the people they would have identified. The government waited for the TRC to complete its recommendations. The total recommendations were then presented. After being presented to the president then tabled them in Parliament. And Parliament, the whole Parliament, both chambers of Parliament decided that there would be some reparations to be paid to some individual. Following the joint sitting of the Houses of Parliament, of all those, because there are many recommendations, but these four, there are 4 recommendations that had to be implemented.
Firstly, it recommended an amount of 30,000 rands to particular victims. Secondly, it was an issue of some medical benefits or related benefits to those that had suffered physical harm. It also provided social assistance. You will note that there were a number of families whose members had been buried in unknown areas. And in that process, the TRC assisted in the investigations and exhumation and bringing those bodies for the purposes of reburial. It also made a recommendation for community rehabilitation in terms of creating symbols and monuments.
The President's Fund was established in terms of Section 42 of the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act. It was specifically for the payment of reparation benefits to designated victims.
One of those victims was Sina Mpofu Makalamele.
Rile in ka 1992 ka December. Hutlile hipo itsamaya a ke a sheba ka ne na le batho ba ka ho ba ne le bosiu. Ha ke re ke hlodisa lefestereng ke bona batho ba kentse mabona magubedu ba pere di vest tse gubedu. Ba kena batho ba mafestere ba re ba bula mnyako hana o buleha ke he ba kuka lesenke ba kena ka hare jwalo ka dinku ka hara lefestere. Ya re ha ke re ke a hoeletsa mme le yena a re thola a re ska hoeletsa thola. Ha ke thola letswalo le se le ntja jwale hore ho etsahalang jwalo ka rona ha ke bone ya lenkamo. Ha ke le busy ke shebile hore ngwana on salam ra wa ngwanyana ba mo shapa ka lerumo mo mkokotlong ha le ntsha a kena tlasa bete e mongwe o eme ka ntle ho nna o mpitsitse ha nngwe a mpitsa hape habedi mo hlohong go ho fella ha ka ke matla a ke a tseba le hore ho etsahetseng ke re ke tsosa hloho ke bona mollo le la kabila mollo mme ba ntse ba mo kapella fela ba mo spraya mollo o ba busy mo mmeleng wa hae le mo mpetong wa ka o le busy ntate a kura ke sa bona motho ka leka ho mo tshwara ka mo phutha ebile ke bona hantle hore o hlokofetse bana sa eme a se itse ka tomo ho letse ka ngwana ya tsamaile ya rantse ke le jalo mme o le front a ngweletsa a re itlo ngwana ka ke tlo thusa ke sa kgone ho fitla ho yena a nkuka ka kuka ngwana ya sura mata ra kena mo a re fitla a re qeta ho kena lejo le leholo latla la shapa mnyako ra dula fatshe ra koba dihloho ke he a ba ya letse llakane hona mo robetse ke botsa hore mme wa ka o kae ntate wa ka o kae ho sena motho a nkaraba ke qadile ho utlwa ka hore ke na le 30,000 ke tlo itholang from ho ba TRC this year ka April ka di 15 tsa September ke he phone intlokela hore 30,000 ya hao ikene mo bankeng a ke a robala bosiung bo ke he sentse ke di plans tsa ka se ke di a di lefatshe hore ke lo etsa seli se ke tsetse bana baka le ha bo bona ba tle ba ska tshwana le nna 30,000 e entse bophelo ba ka bo change.
Miss Makalamele was successfully located by the Department of Justice's TRC unit, but in some cases victims proved much more difficult to find.
Any luck?
I'm afraid not. I went to the address that you gave me and the people living there now say that he moved 3 months ago.
Oh no. Really?
This is what? The 16th person we haven't been able to locate?
18th. Another agent was here earlier. Same story.
There were two main challenges. The one was the relocation of beneficiaries. They had given a certain address to the TRC when they made their statements, but they have since relocated. The second one was the beneficiaries that died, having made the statement in that period of having to pay them while this process was still continuing. Some of them are deceased, and we have a problem to locate the rightful next of kin. We have 636 beneficiaries that are still to be paid and who are being traced.
So as we can see, work has been going on, and we hope that If not the end of this year, by sometime early next year, we shall have completed this list.
Coming up, how will the TRC unit finally find Terence?
Lunga ezo glasi apho.
Zibna kanti sisezimaki.
Wenza ntoni wenzithi?
Sisuyayifuna?
Ewe hayi ndizawuyenza, hlala phansi man. Elo kitchen ingcolile, abantwana balingcolisile.
Oh, kanti ke bendizawuyenza wena sisi.
Ngiyayiqonda uzawuyenza. Into yake uzawuthatha unyaka onesixhuma kaloku wena.
Oh, andazi wabe ndaba yintoni ngaphandle kwakho mntasekhaya.
Buzawubugezela enye ixhewukazi kwenye indawo.
Hayi ke. Kanti ke I would probably be terrorizing a young one.
Hey, inene.
Siyakuxolela uyandazi nje sisi.
Yo.
Sisi unixolele ngelo phepha mntasekhaya. Inoba ndiyilahle la ndaba uyifunda.
Hayi namsebenzi wethu beniphendula nje ndijonge esematheni.
Okay.
Hey. Beniyazi balento ye-TRC sekhona, yes?
Uthethe ukuthini na sisi?
Kukho ilisti apha yamagama abantu abazawufumana igrant kwi-TRC.
Wow. Quite something. Bese ngicinga uba bayilebala mna yonke loo nto leyo.
Hey, Terence.
Sisi?
Gama lakho likhona apha.
Hayibo. Uthethe ukuthini na sisi?
Ndithi igama lakho lilapha.
Hayi suka wethu sisi. Ndagcwalisa application forms over 10 years ago. Makube ngomnye Terence Gunya lo.
Hey, iphi phone?
Nansi pokothini. Why?
Hayi ngizofonela le ndawo ninamoya.
Ufana nje sisuzamosha ngemali yami kwanexesha lakho. Yini bamba?
Kuqale kube mnyama kuze kube mhlophe mntu wabantu. And dinethemba loba uzayifumana le mali.
Sisi, so far I was calmed. You did it last time. I am not going to go through all...
Hello? Hello? Yes, I got your number on the article from today's paper. Yes, about TRC reparation grants. My brother's name is on the list. Terence Gunya. But we're not sure whether it's his name or someone else's. Oh, really? Yes. And when would it be? You'll come back to me with the date and time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, bye.
And then?
Abantu ababe applye ngo-99 uyotsho ku-2000 ugovernment ke ngoku uyabafuna uza kubanika imali zabo.
Wow. Nyani sisi?
Inene. And ndinethemba loba wena ungomnye wabo.
The TRC process naturally had to have a beginning and an ending. It was a good start in the process of nation building and social cohesion. All other matters in terms of the restoration of what many people have lost, it has to be things that could be carried by the government itself. But it was important that when the TRC was commenced, it had to be publicized as widely as possible and people be given an opportunity to access it as easily as possible so that all the recognizable victims could be dealt with at that particular point in time. But as these things happen, indeed, there will be people that will have fallen out of the cracks, but it was important that it had to be done within a specified period of time. Other than that, it could have been something that continues in perpetuity. And if it continued in perpetuity, it will have defeated the very purpose of reconciliation in our country.
You, Mr. Gunya.
Yes.
I'm Lillian. Do you remember me? I helped you with your interview when you were applying for the grant.
Oh, yes, of course I do.
Quite a hard one to find, sir.
So I've heard.
When they told me that your sister had phoned in, I could not believe it. Made my day.
Glad to be of service, ma'am.
I just need 5 minutes. I must go collect the forms that we need to fill out so that we can organize the money and everything. Do you have your ID with you? I may as well make a copy while I'm there. Thank you. Just give me a second.
Quite honestly, the amount of 30,000 rands could not be equated with the amount of harm or suffering that many of the people in this country had endured. But at least that was a gesture to acknowledge people's victimhood. That was a gesture to make sure that at least solace is being provided. But it also happens that many families and many individuals were in dire need of that amount of money. So it provided them at least with a great start.
I must say that this 30,000 was more a token of appreciation for participating in the TRC process.
It was not done for the sake of totally paying these people a reparation, but it is merely more like symbolic in nature. Because after all, there are so many people in South Africa who never appeared before the TRC, whose cases are not known, and therefore, because you did not appear before the TRC, unfortunately the law binds us.
The restoration of what apartheid has done to a number of people could never be conceivable, be dealt with during the time that was allocated. And even the considerations for the reparations are far from sorting out what the people had suffered. But overall, it was a very important choice that the country had to make. And the TRC was possible the best catalyst and impetus that made sure that this journey is started on a sound footing, and on a footing that is to make sure that we as a country, we will not have regrets. Whatever was not done by the TRC, the country still has an opportunity to redress those things, as you can see in a number of legislations, whether it be with respect to land, whether it be respect to access to resources, or even access to courts, etc., etc. The country has got an opportunity to build on the foundations that the TRC had set for ourselves.
As of November 2011, over 16,000 people had been paid final reparations, and about 600 were still to be located. If you were declared a victim of gross human rights abuses by the TRC, or if you are the rightful next of kin of a deceased victim and final reparations have not yet been received, phone Mr. Nwako Rampadi on 021 315 1940. The final verdict was brought to you by SABC together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.